Hi, I'm Michael Yardney. If you open any weekend newspaper, you're going to see a large number of proposed new apartment projects being marketed before they're even being built. Now, why on earth would anyone want to buy property that hasn't even been built yet? Well, you know, plenty of people do, and it's called buying off the plan. With our property markets being very strong at the moment, I know many investors are considering buying off the plan. They're enticed by these advertisements, the hype of stamp duty savings, and so-called cheap prices. They hope by getting in today and settling on their properties in a few years' time, the value of the properties will have increased and they'll have turned a relatively small deposit into a substantial profit, all the while avoiding all those nasty holding costs. Now, others actually never intend to settle their purchase, hoping to sell off the apartments for a profit before completion. So does buying off the plan make good sense? In general, the answer is no. While I know a few investors who've made money buying off the plan, the road is littered with many more who've regretted their purchase. Frequently, they've found that the value of their property on completion is considerably less than what they paid. Look, there's many other issues with buying off the plan as well, but before I explore them, let's first understand why projects are even marketed this way. While developers know they can get a better price for a completed property, one that buyers can see and touch and feel, today lenders aren't going to fund construction and without insisting on a substantial portion of the units being pre-sold. This ensures the viability of the project. Obviously, the banks expect a developer to make a reasonable profit margin, and so they should. This is built into the final price, as is the substantial marketing budget which covers the cost of those full-page ads in the papers and the expensive glossy brochures for the projects and the maps and the models. And then there's generous selling commissions given to the project marketers and incentives offered to financial planners. So you can understand why the cost is inflated. Remember, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If 10 to 15% of the project's budget's selling price is spent on marketing and selling costs, then the buyer has to pay for this. As the completion date for many high-rise inner city projects may be years away, the inflated price somehow is buried in the advertising hype such as buy at today's price, settle in 2 years. The developers are counting on the fact that the longer the settlement period, the less chance you've got of knowing what the final price really is and what represents good value. Looking back, many investors who purchased off the plan over the last decade found they paid a price that was way too high, and even on completion, their properties were valued considerably less than the purchase price they paid. Here's another couple of reasons why I'd steer off the plan properties. Number one, there's too many fingers in the pie. I've seen far too many off the plan properties offer large commissions with middlemen, marketing budgets, salespeople, and as I said, it means the investor overpays. Don't be lulled into a false sense of security because you've been told there's already been a number of pre-sales. You'll find many of these are at inflated prices to overseas investors who are unable to buy established properties, and they've got little knowledge of the local markets. And they've got their own unique motivations for buying property in Australia, such as a desire to emigrate or a place to put their money in the future. The second reason I'd avoid off the plan is because banks won't buy it. Given that most loan approvals are only current for 3 months, obtaining a formal pre-approval for an off the plan purchase, it's a waste of time. The problem is we currently have 4 big banks in Australia, and each of them have got a policy restricting their exposure to any one building. Most won't lend more than 15% of the properties in a large complex. Now this means if there's 100 apartments in the complex, and you're number 16 to approach that particular bank when the building's complete, they may decline your application, or you'll have to go chasing finance elsewhere. If they do lend you for your purchase, you may find because of the inner city postcode, you're going to actually get a lower loan to value ratio, meaning you need a bigger deposit. By the way, some investors who buy off the plan won't be able to settle and will need to sell their property at whatever price they can achieve. Unfortunately, that's what the banks are going to value your property at, the going sale price on completion, not what you paid for it. If you combine this with a lower loan to value ratio, you're likely to need an even bigger deposit than you initially thought. Another reason I avoid them is the low loan to asset ratio. Remember the old investment rule, land appreciates while buildings depreciate. If you go by the book, you should aim at getting the highest land asset ratio possible. Aim is get as much of the valuable land under your apartment as you can. However, the developer wants the opposite. They want to squeeze as many apartments on the site as they possibly can. So essentially, the interests of the developer and you, the investor, are in direct opposition. Another reason I'd avoid it is because most of the plan developments are sold to investors. This means you end up with the building occupied by more tenants than homeowners. Fact is, owner-occupiers tend to be far more careful when it comes to maintaining the building and enhancing the development's long-term capital value. By the way, it's not much fun going to those body corporate meetings full of investors who are not keen on spending, or simply can't spend money on maintaining the building. The other reason I'd avoid them is currently there's an oversupply of new apartments in many of our big capital cities, and a glut of properties coming on board when there's about 26,000 properties on the drawing board in Sydney and about 6,000 in Melbourne. You're going to be competing with all those other investors out there who want to rent their new investments. These issues mean your investments are going to lack scarcity, one of the factors that I look for when I want to increase the value of my properties. Another factor I'd be wary of is that many of the planned projects currently being marketed won't even get off the ground. Sure, you'll get your deposit back, but it means you'll have lost precious time with your money not working in the market. On the flip side, when the developer completes the project, don't be surprised if they've made some amendments, some changes to the floor plans or substituted different finishes or fittings. While they've got the right to do so in the contract, usually you'll find the changes are not going to be in your favour. Now, don't be lulled by rental guarantees, because often developers offer these as a bribe to entice investors who might be focused on their cash flow and they're worried about vacancies. The problem is you pay for these rental guarantees in the purchase price. That's just another cost that inflates your already premium price. And once the guarantee expires, the rental income reverts back to the going market rate, which is usually much lower than the guarantee. So what lessons can you learn from this? Some of these problems can be avoided by buying from developers with a good track record and buying in prime locations, as there always seems to be demand for units in these prime buildings. Also, when buying off the plan, you want capital growth. If you bought a completed property, it'll grow over the same 12 months, 18 months while you're waiting for the capital growth from your off-the-plan property. With a 2 more year time frame for the completion of most high-rise projects, it's just going to be too difficult to predict what the future will hold. So I feel you should receive a sizable discount for the uncertainty of buying off the plan. There's uncertainty about what the property markets are going to be like on completion. What are interest rates going to be like? What's the standard of the finish in your building going to be like? Will it be like the display unit, or will the developer cut some corners? Is there going to be a new building at the front or the side of it? What appears to be a great view today could be blocked out in 2 years' time. So as I said, to cover all these uncertainties, surely you should be buying at a substantial discount. But in reality, you're usually paying a premium. Therefore, giving your developer the first year's capital growth, and it's not his to have. So what's the alternative? I prefer buying established properties, and I ensure I buy the property that's going to outperform the averages by using my 4-stranded strategic approach. Number 1, I buy properties below their intrinsic value. Number 2, I buy in areas that have had long, strong history of capital growth. Number 3, I look for properties with a twist, something unique, special, different about them. And the 4th strand is I love buying properties where I can manufacture some growth through refurbishments, renovations, or redevelopment. If you want to take advantage of the opportunities our current property markets are offering, now's a good time to consider your options. If you're looking for independent, unbiased advice, no one can help you like the team at Metropole. The independent property strategist there would be more than happy to sit down with you and help you get going if you're a beginning investor, or review your current portfolio if you're an established property investor. And as we've got no properties for sale, our advice is unbiased and independent. So whether you're a beginner or a seasoned professional, come along, have a chat with the team at Metropole. Give us a call at 1300 20 30 30.